Thank you, Chairman. Director Adams, I'm going to go back to you. I know the DIA does a lot to support ongoing operations. One of that is one of the functions you all perform is involving in the targeting process specifically. So can you just describe very briefly the role that DIA plays in the targeting cycle and more specifically these ongoing support that you provide to combatant commands during contingency operations?
What happens when America's military targeting system gets questioned in Congress over reports of a strike hitting the wrong location overseas? That's exactly what unfolded during a tense exchange involving Congressman Jason Crow and a top Defense Intelligence Agency official. Tonight, we're breaking down the serious questions raised about military targeting databases, outdated intelligence, and whether America's national security system is keeping up with modern warfare. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the stories the mainstream media refuses to fully unpack.
In targeting?
Yes, sir. With regards to targeting, it is a very specific and defined process. It's outlined by two specific chairmen of the Joint Chiefs instructions. One is targeting. The other is the development of no-strike and collateral damage methodologies. The overall, and I'll just kind of hit it at an enterprise-wide view, and then but I can deep dive on any of the specific portions of it.
Just a top level.
Yeah, so we maintain the foundational military database of all infrastructure and order of battle that is the reference that everyone leverages, and everyone ties into it and uses it and pulls from it. In that database, the instructions allow us to create a model. Each record has a certain BE number, and it has all the defined properties and things that you would need to know about that item. And it's updated regularly depending on the priority of the theater or the type of target it is.
And do the commands, do they give you guidelines to develop those packages? Like how do you, what's the request? So what's the poll, so to speak?
So the overall poll comes from plans that are out there in terms of what types of targets might be needed to achieve the operational goals of the commander. And then from that, the database is built. And
so
then
the database is responding to or lays over like op plans, for example?
Correct.
Okay.
And so with that database, when a plan is beginning to be executed, that database is used by the combatant command to pull what is in that database to leverage. And then there's a deliberate process by which the Defense Intelligence Agency does not do targeting, we do support to targeting. And so the targeting occurs at the combatant command. They go through their process of lining up through a variety of defined steps of how they're going to leverage the data from the database. They can, once that data is used and those lists are developed, they can request from us vetting, not required, but what the vetting would provide, and it's not just to us, vetting can be provided by the CIA, DIA, NGA, NSA, and it reviews and responds to the lists that they've developed on their targets. And in that, we assess intel gain and loss based on what their operational plan is, as well as potential collateral damage from that.
And is there any type of regular update interval, or is that only in response to a request from a combatant command to update or to vet?
The database is updated regularly. And I will say, you asked, you gentlemen both asked about resourcing. That's one of the things that we are most challenged at, because in our old system, MIDB, it was a very manual process. And so we would have to prioritize using communications with the combatant commands, a subset of that. And some would be updated. Each target has a category on it, and it has a refresh interval of 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, no refresh if there's no anticipated change. And that's where we get behind at times, and that's where we can actually potentially leverage not only the new foundational database, MARS, which is a modernized database, but also automation and AI in conjunction with that process to try to take advantage of that technology. And then once the vetting, if it's chosen, is chosen to be done, it goes back to the combatant command, and then they do the final validation. And then it's the combatant commander who puts the targets from that process on the plan and executes the plan.
So there are public reports about this strike on the girls' school in Iran that would indicate that it was a U.S. strike, and it occurred because of outdated targeting, right? That it was on an old targeting set that hadn't been updated. The U.S. military thought it was one thing, it was something else. So I'm not going to ask you specifically about that strike because I know that's under 15-6 investigation, and that process will continue. But just, generally, how would something like that happen? Would that just be a gap between the interval that you just described that would dictate the vetting and the timeline for updating the targeting?
I would say I am fully supporting Central Command's investigation because I want to answer to that question as well. Because we have built our targeting plan and process and our orders that manage the process through decades of work, right? And I want to ensure if there is a flaw in our system, I'm guaranteed the 15-6 will determine that, and we will fix that flaw. But as of right now, I cannot guess what the problem was or make any guess as to or presume what the investigation might reveal.
Okay. And then the last question is about legal elements like law of war, law of armed conflict. At what point do targeting sets and packages get vetted for legality with the law of war?
So I talked about those steps. The last step I mentioned was validation. That's where operational and legal review takes place, and whether it complies with the law of war. So that's the final step before it gets approved by the combatant command.
And do you currently have any concerns about the resourcing or capacity for, that's done by JAG officers?
It's done by the combatant commander defines who his cell is that does his target validation. It likely will include, and I don't know, I can get you a detailed answer as to what the composition of that team would be. But
so the combatant commanders are doing that
yes.
legal review element, that last step?
Yes.
Okay. And sitting here today, I know you're not at the combatant command level, but sitting here today, are you aware of any concerns that have been raised in the last 6 months by any of those cells, any of those JAG officers involved about the legality of any targeting sets?
I am not, sir. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I yield back.
In this hearing, Congressman Jason Crow questioned DIA Director Adams about how the U.S. military selects and verifies targets during combat operations. Now, one thing became very clear right away. The Defense Intelligence Agency says it does not directly choose targets. Instead, it provides intelligence support to combatant commanders who ultimately make those operational decisions. But here's where things got serious. Director Adams admitted that the military's targeting database depends on constant updates, and some records may only be refreshed every 6 months, every year, or even longer depending on priority levels. That raises an important national security concern. In modern warfare, outdated intelligence can become dangerous intelligence. Crow referenced public reports surrounding a strike involving a girls' school in Iran that allegedly may have resulted from old targeting information still sitting in the system. The Pentagon investigation is still ongoing, so no final conclusions have been reached. But the hearing exposed a deeper issue many Americans rarely hear about. Our military relies heavily on massive intelligence databases that require constant maintenance, manpower, and technological modernization. Director Adams acknowledged resource challenges and even pointed to artificial intelligence and automation as possible solutions moving forward. Now look, supporting a strong military does not mean blindly ignoring mistakes or weaknesses. Real patriotism means demanding excellence from our institutions, especially when American credibility and innocent lives are involved. One important detail from this hearing was the explanation of legal review procedures. According to the DIA director, strike packages go through operational and law of war reviews before approval. Combatant commanders oversee the final validation process, often with legal experts involved. That matters because America's military is supposed to operate under stricter standards than our adversaries. And frankly, this conversation also highlights something conservatives have warned about for years. Government systems become bloated, outdated and inefficient when accountability disappears. If intelligence systems are falling behind because of staffing shortages, outdated technology, or bureaucratic slowdowns, Congress needs to address it immediately. National defense is not the place for complacency. At the same time, Americans should be cautious about rushing to conclusions before investigations are complete. Responsible leadership means getting facts first, not exploiting headlines for politics. But one thing is undeniable. This hearing pulled back the curtain on how complicated and high-stakes modern military operations really are. And when mistakes happen, the American people deserve transparency, accountability, and solutions. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more informed coverage on national security, Congress, and America First politics, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with fellow patriots. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.